The anniversary of my father's death always felt like a heavy shroud, and today was no different. I had left the office early, hoping to find solace in the arms of my husband, Song Kai. He had been my rock since the funeral, the man who stepped in to help me manage the Ruan family's sprawling conglomerate when I was too paralyzed by grief to function. I clutched a bottle of vintage wine, imagining a quiet evening of comfort. When I reached our villa, the first thing I noticed was the front door. It was slightly ajar, the heavy oak swinging inward with a faint, mournful groan. My heart skipped a beat. Song Kai was meticulous. He never left the house unsecured. "Kai," I called out, my voice echoing in the marble foyer. There was no answer, but a faint strain of music began to drift down from the second floor. It was a slow, sultry tango, the very song we had danced to at our wedding. A small, bittersweet smile touched my lips. Had he remembered the date of our first meeting? Was he trying to cheer me up? I climbed the stairs, the wine bottle feeling cold in my hand. As I approached our master bedroom, the music grew louder, more insistent. I reached for the handle, my touch light, intending to surprise him. The scene that met my eyes didn't just break my heart, it shattered my entire world. Song Kai wasn't alone. He was on our marriage bed, his body entwined with Cang Lang, my best friend since childhood, the woman I had trusted with my deepest secrets. They were both completely naked, their skin glistening under the amber glow of the bedside lamps. But they weren't just lying there. Song Kai was standing behind her, his hands gripping her waist, moving her body in a perverse, rhythmic mockery of a dance. "Look at you, Linner," Song Kai whispered, his voice thick with a lust I had never seen directed at me. "You're a much better student than my dull wife. Follow my lead. 1, 2, 3. I felt the wine bottle slip from my fingers. It hit the hardwood floor with a deafening crash, dark red liquid splattering across the cream-colored rug like a fresh wound. They both bolted upright. Cang Lang let out a shallow, fake gasp, pulling the silk sheets to her chest, but her eyes weren't full of shame. They were full of triumph. Song Kai, however, didn't even look startled for long. He stood up, slowly, unabashed by his nakedness. "Mei," he said, his voice instantly shifting into that calm, condescending tone he used when he thought I was being emotional. "You're home early. You shouldn't have seen this. I was just teaching Cang Lang how to dance. She's nervous about the gala." "Teaching her to dance?" I whispered, my voice trembling with a rage, so hot it felt like ice. "On our bed? Naked? How long, Song Kai? How long have you been laughing at me?" "Long enough to realize you're a bore, Ruan Mei." Cang Lang snapped, her mask of friendship finally discarded. "You have the money, but you don't have the soul. Song Kai deserves someone who can actually keep up with him." I turned to run, to scream, to call the police, anything to get away from the filth in that room. But Song Kai was faster. He lunged across the room, his hand catching my arm with a grip like iron. He dragged me toward the large, floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked the stone terrace 3 stories below. "You've always been so prone to depression since your father died, Mei," Song Kai hissed, his face inches from mine. His eyes were no longer those of the man I loved. They were the eyes of a predator. "The board will understand." The grieving heiress, unable to cope, finally decides to join her father. It's a tragic, poetic end. "Song Kai, no." I screamed, clawing at his face. "Goodbye, Mei," he said. With a violent shove, he sent me crashing through the glass. The world shattered into 1,000 glittering shards. I felt the rush of cold night air, the stomach-churning weightlessness of the fall, and the sight of Song Kai standing at the broken window, calmly adjusting his hair as I plummeted toward the darkness. Death wasn't asleep. It was a cold, silent impact that turned the world to black. I woke up with a scream trapped in my throat, my body convulsing as if I were still hitting the stone terrace. I reached out, my fingers clawing at the sheets, expecting cold blood and shattered bone. Instead, I felt soft, Egyptian cotton. I bolted upright, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I was in my bedroom, our bedroom, but the window was intact. The morning sun was streaming through the sheer curtains, painting patterns of light on the walls. There was no broken wine bottle. There was no tango music. My hand flew to my neck, searching for the bruises I knew should be there. My skin was smooth. I scrambled out of bed and ran to the vanity, staring at my reflection. I looked younger, the dark circles of grief under my eyes not yet as deep as they had been on the day of my death. My eyes fell on the digital calendar on the nightstand. July 12th, 2025. I sank to the floor, my knees giving out.
July.
I was back. I was 3 months away from that night in October. 3 months before Song Kai and Jiang Lin decided my life was an inconvenience to their greed. Mei, are you awake, sweetheart? The door opened and Song Kai walked in. He was wearing his expensive charcoal suit, looking every bit the devoted, hard-working husband. He carried a tray with a single rose and a cup of tea. Seeing him made my stomach roll with a violent, visceral nausea. I wanted to scream, to take the letter opener on the desk and drive it into his treacherous heart. But I forced myself to be still. If I showed my hand now, I would just be the depressed wife he could gas marry into a mental institution. I'm awake, I said, my voice sounding thin and strange to my own ears. You look like you've seen a ghost, Song Kai said, setting the tray down and walking toward me. He reached out to touch my cheek, and it took every ounce of my willpower not to flinch. Another nightmare about your father? Yes, I lied, looking down so he couldn't see the murderous fire in my eyes. A very bad one. I dreamt I fell, Kai. I dreamt I fell, and no one caught me. Don't be silly, he said, kissing my forehead with a tenderness that made me want to gag. I'll always be here to catch you. Now, drink your tea. I have to head to the office. Jiang Lin is stopping by later to take you shopping. She said you've been cooped up too much lately. Jiang Lin, I repeated, the name tasting like poison. How thoughtful of her. She's your best friend, Mei, he said, heading for the door. She cares about you almost as much as I do. The moment the door closed, I spat on the floor. I didn't drink the tea. I poured it into the potted lily by the window. I stood up, my mind racing. I had 90 days. 90 days to strip Song Kai of everything he coveted, my wealth, my company, and his freedom. But I couldn't do it alone. Song Kai had already infiltrated the Ruan Corporation's board. He had his own people in our security detail. I needed someone who existed outside his world. I needed a wolf to catch a rat. I opened my jewelry box and pressed a hidden button at the bottom. A false compartment popped open, revealing a heavy black iron coin with a wolf's head engraved on it. My father had given it to me on his deathbed. If you are ever in a corner where the law cannot reach, Mei, he had whispered, find the man they called Cang Lang. Tell him the Ruan family is calling in the debt. I gripped the coin until the edges bit into my palm. Cang Lang, I whispered. I hope you're as dangerous as they say. The silver bar was located in the industrial district, a place where the streetlights were always flickering and the air smelled of salt and rust. It was a place a woman like Ruan Mei should never be seen. I stepped out of the taxi, wearing a hooded trench coat and sunglasses, feeling the weight of the iron coin in my pocket. As I entered the bar, the music stopped. A dozen men with scarred faces and cold eyes turned to look at me. The silence was heavy, predatory. I'm looking for Cang Lang, I said, my voice steady despite the hammering of my heart. A man at the bar, a giant with a shaved head, let out a rough laugh. The boss doesn't see tourists, little girl. Go back to the uptown malls. I didn't blink. I walked to the bar and slammed the iron coin onto the counter. The metal clinked against the wood, a solid, final sound. The giant's laughter died instantly. He leaned in, staring at the wolf's head, then looked at me with a newfound wariness. Wait here, he said. 5 minutes later, I was led into a back office that looked more like a command center. Monitors lined the walls, showing live feeds of docks, warehouses, and, to my shock, the exterior of the Ruan Corporation. Sitting behind a massive mahogany desk was a man who looked like he was carved from shadow.
Cang Lang.
He wasn't the scarred thug I expected. He was lean, dressed in a sharp black turtleneck, with hair that fell over eyes as sharp as a hawk's. He had a jagged scar running from his temple to his jaw, a reminder of a life lived on the edge. "The Ruan coin," Cang Lang said, his voice a low, gravelly rasp. He picked up the coin and flipped it between his fingers. "Your father saved my life in the border wars when I was nothing but a gutter rat. He told me one day his daughter might come calling. I expected a business favor. I didn't expect the Ruan heiress to look like she's planning a murder." "I'm not planning a murder, Mr. Cang," I said, sitting across from him. "I'm planning a resurrection." "Cang Lang said, leaning back. "He's been moving aggressively. He's already liquidated 3 of your father's secondary holdings. He's also sleeping with your best friend, Jiang Lin, at a boutique hotel on Tuesday nights. Do you want them dead?" I froze. "You already knew?" "I am your father's debt, Ruan Mei," Cang Lang said, his eyes narrowing. "I've been watching your husband since the day he married you. I knew he was a snake, but your father told me not to interfere unless you asked. So, I'm asking you now. Do you want their heads on a platter?" "No," I said, my voice turning cold. "Death is too quick. I want him to watch his empire crumble. I want him to be exposed in front of everyone he's tried to impress. I want him to have nothing." Cang Lang let out a slow, dark chuckle. "A woman after my own heart. What do you need?" "I need eyes and ears inside my own home," I said. "I need technology that Cang Kai's security can't detect. And I need a shadow. Someone who can ensure that when he tries to push me again, I'm the one who stays standing." Cang Lang stood up and walked around the desk. He was tall, his presence overwhelming the room. He stopped in front of me and reached out, his hand hovering near my face. For a second, I thought he was going to touch me, but he simply tucked his stray hair behind my ear. His fingers were calloused and warm. "From this moment on," Cang Lang whispered, "I am your shadow. You go nowhere without my knowledge. You do nothing without my protection. Cang Kai thinks he's the master of your house, but he's just a tenant in a cage I'm about to build." "Thank you," I said. "Don't thank me yet, Ruan Mei," he said, his gaze dropping to my lips. "The price of my help is your absolute trust."
Can you give me that?
"I have no one else to trust," I replied. "Then we have a deal," he said. "Now go home. Act the part of the grieving, depressed wife. Let him think he's winning. It makes the fall much more satisfying." Living with Cang Kai for the next month was a masterclass in psychological warfare. Every morning, he would kiss me and tell me how much he loved me. Every evening, he would sit in his study, supposedly working on our future, while I knew he was actually drafting documents to transfer the Ruan family's offshore assets into his personal accounts. I played my role to perfection. I grew paler. I spoke in whispers. I let him see me staring out of windows with a vacant, haunted expression. I even let Jiang Lin comfort me, listening to her poisonous advice about how I should trust Cang Kai with everything so I could focus on my mental health. But beneath the surface, the trap was being laid. Cang Lang had provided me with micro-recorders no larger than a grain of rice. I had placed them in Cang Kai's study, in his car, and most importantly, behind the headboard of our bed. Every night, I would retreat to the guest room, claiming I couldn't sleep, and I would listen to the feeds Cang Lang sent to my secure phone. "She's almost there, Linner," I heard Cang Kai's voice crackle through the speaker one night. "Another few weeks of the grief counseling I've arranged, and the board will vote to declare her incompetent. Then, the Ruan fortune is ours." "I can't wait to move into that villa," Jiang Lin replied, her voice muffled by a giggle. "I'm going to burn all her clothes. And that ugly wedding portrait. Do you think she'll actually jump, or will you have to help her?" "She'll jump," Cang Kai said, his voice cold. "One way or another." I sat in the dark of the guest room, my hands shaking as I listened to them plot my death. A tear escaped my eye, but it wasn't a tear of sadness. It was a tear of pure, crystalline hate. A shadow moved in the corner of the room. I didn't scream. I knew that scent now, leather and rain. Cang Lang stepped out of the darkness, his presence a silent comfort. You shouldn't listen to that alone, he said, his voice a low rumble. He walked over and took the phone from my hand, turning off the recording. I need to hear it, I whispered. I need to remember why I'm doing this. You don't need to remember, Cang Lang said. He sat on the edge of the bed, his dark eyes fixed on mine. You need to survive. The annual meeting is in 3 weeks. Song Kai has invited all the major shareholders. He thinks he's going to announce your retirement and his ascension to chairman. He's in for a surprise, I said. I've intercepted the music file he's prepared for the closing ceremony, Cang Lang said, a predatory glint in his eye. He wants to play a tribute to your father to honor the Ruan legacy. It's a sentimental piece designed to make everyone emotional before he takes over. We're going to change the playlist, I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. Cang Lang reached out and took my hand. His grip was large, protective. I've also found the evidence of the shell companies. He's been laundering money through Jianglin's fashion boutique. It's enough to put them both away for life. Life isn't enough, I said. I want them to be pariahs. I want everyone they've ever lied to see them for what they are. Cang Lang leaned in, his face inches from mine. You're becoming quite the strategist, Ruan Mei. Are you sure you're the same girl who walked into my bar a month ago? That girl died in October, I said. I'm just the one who came back to bury her killers. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, he leaned forward and pressed a lingering, soft kiss to my forehead. Sleep, Mei Mei. Your shadow is watching. The tension in the villa was becoming a physical weight. Song Kai was growing overconfident, his movements swaggering, his tone with me becoming more dismissive by the day. He thought the finish line was in sight. I, meanwhile, was spending more time with Cang Lang. He didn't just provide protection, he provided a strange kind of sanctuary. We would meet in the dead of night, sometimes in his office, sometimes in the back of a blacked-out SUV. He taught me how to read financial ledgers, how to spot a lie in a person's eyes, and more importantly, how to stand my ground. You're becoming too attached to your shadow, Ruan Mei. Cang Lang said one night as we sat in his car, watching the rain blur the lights of the city. Is that a warning? I asked, looking at his sharp profile. It's an observation, he said. He turned to look at me, his eyes unreadable. My world is dark. It's full of blood and debts. When this is over, you'll go back to being the queen of the Ruan Corporation. You won't need a man like me. You think I'm going back to the way things were? I asked, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Cang Kai taught me that the refined world is just a prettier version of yours, Cang Lang. At least in your world, the enemies show their teeth. He reached out, his thumb tracing the line of my jaw. You have a sharp tongue for a socialite. I'm not a socialite anymore, I said. I leaned into his touch, my heart racing. I'm a survivor. And I think I like the dark more than I thought. He didn't pull away. Instead, he leaned in, his breath hot against my lips. Don't play with fire, Mei Mei. You might get burned. I've already been burned, I whispered. I'm looking for the flame that can burn back. He kissed me then, a hard, possessive kiss that tasted of danger and iron. It wasn't the polite, practiced kiss Cang Kai had given me for years. It was a kiss that claimed me, a kiss that promised that no matter what happened, I was no longer alone. When we broke apart, he was breathing hard. The annual meeting is in 3 days, he said, his voice rough. The file is ready. The servers are breached. All you have to do is stand on that stage and look beautiful. I'll do the rest. I'll be ready, I said. One more thing, Cang Lang said, his eyes turning cold. Cang Kai has ordered a special sedative for you on the morning of the meeting. He wants you compliant and dazed when he leads you onto the stage. Jianglin will be the one to give it to you. I'll make sure to thank her for it, I said, a lethal glint in my eye. The morning of the annual meeting arrived with a cold, gray mist. I sat at my vanity, watching Jianglin in the mirror as she helped me get ready. She was wearing a dress that was far too revealing for a corporate event, a celebration of her impending status as the new mistress of the Ruan house. You look so tired, Mei Mei, Jianglin said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. She handed me a glass of water and a small white pill. The doctor said this would help with the nerves. It's just a mild relaxant. You don't want to have a panic attack on stage, do you? I looked at the pill. I knew it was the sedative Cang Lang had warned me about. You're right, Liner, I said, a faint, vacant smile on my lips. What would I do without you? I put the pill in my mouth and took a sip of water. As I turned to reach for my earrings, I used my tongue to push the pill into the small gap between my cheek and gums. I swallowed the water, making a convincing, gulping sound. There, Jiang Lin said, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Now, let's get you into your dress. Song Kai is waiting. The Ruan Corporation's Grand Hall was packed with hundreds of shareholders, reporters, and the city's elite. Song Kai was on the stage, delivering a stirring speech about innovation and legacy. He looked every bit the grieving hero, his voice cracking perfectly as he mentioned my father. And now, Song Kai said, his voice booming over the speakers, I would like to invite my brave wife, Ruan Mei, to join me. As many of you know, she has struggled greatly since her father's passing. Today, she has an important announcement regarding the future leadership of this company. He walked to the side of the stage and took my hand. I walked out, my movements slightly sluggish, my eyes glazed, the perfect image of a drugged, broken woman. The crowd went silent, pity etched on their faces. Thank you, Kai, I whispered into the microphone, my voice shaking. It's okay, sweetheart, he whispered back, his hand squeezing mine so hard it bruised. Just say the words. Then we can go home and rest. I have something to say, I said, my voice suddenly becoming clear and resonant. I straightened my back, the dazed look vanishing in an instant. I looked directly into the camera of the main news feed. But before I speak, my husband has prepared a special musical tribute to my father. He told me it was a song about the dance of life. Let's listen. Song Kai frowned, confused by my sudden shift in tone. He signaled to the tech booth. Play the music, he commanded. The lights dimmed. The giant screen behind us flickered to life. But instead of the sentimental slideshow of my father, a grainy, high-definition video appeared. It was our bedroom. The audio didn't play music. It played the recording from behind the headboard. She's almost there, Liner, Song Kai's voice thundered through the hall. Another few weeks, and the board will vote to declare her incompetent. Then, the Ruan fortune is ours. The hall went deathly silent. Song Kai's face turned from confusion to a mask of pure, unadulterated horror. Do you think she'll actually jump, or will you have to help her? Jiang Lin's voice followed, echoing off the marble walls. She'll jump, Song Kai's recorded voice replied. One way or another. The video shifted to a split screen. On one side, a ledger showing the embezzlement from my father's accounts. On the other, a live feed from Song Kai's own computer, showing the transfer of assets that had been initiated only 10 minutes ago. Song Kai, I said, my voice cold as the grave as I turned to him on the stage. Did you think I would let you kill me twice? The silence that followed the recording wasn't just a lack of sound. It was a physical weight, a vacuum that sucked the oxygen right out of the grand hall. For a heartbeat, the only thing audible was the frantic, mechanical whirring of the high-definition cameras capturing every second of Song Kai's disintegration. I stood perfectly still, my hands folded demurely in front of me, watching the man I had once loved turn the color of wet ash. Song Kai finally snapped his head toward the tech booth, his face contorted into a mask of pure, unadulterated horror. Turn it off, he screamed, his voice cracking and echoing through the auditorium speakers. It's a fabrication. It's a deep fake designed to ruin me. Someone stopped the feed, but the video didn't stop. It transitioned from the audio of their murderous plotting to a crystal-clear image of Song Kai and Jiang Lin on my marriage bed. The hall erupted. Shareholders were standing up, their faces red with outrage, while reporters lunged toward the stage like a pack of starving wolves. The flashbulbs were a strobe light of judgment, illuminating the sweat pouring down Song Kai's brow. Kai, I said, my voice cutting through his hysteria with a lethal, calm precision. Is it a deep fake when the bank records match the transfers shown on the screen? Or is it a fabrication that you were teaching your mistress to dance while you waited for me to die? He turned to me, his eyes wide and bloodshot. The gentleman CEO was gone, replaced by a cornered animal. "You bitch," he hissed, the microphone catching his venom. "You've been playing me this whole time.
You weren't depressed.
You weren't sick." "I was very sick, Song Kai," I replied, stepping closer until I could see the reflection of his own ruin in his eyes. I was sick of the lies. I was sick of the betrayal. But most of all, I was sick of waiting for the ground to hit me. In the front row, Jiang Lin saw the writing on the wall. She clutched her designer handbag to her chest and tried to scramble toward the side exit, her high heels clicking frantically against the marble.
But she didn't get 5 steps.
Two tall men in black suits, Cang Lang's elite shadows, stepped into her path, their arms crossing over their chests like iron bars. "Where are you going, Linner?" I called out, my voice booming through the hall. "The dance isn't over yet. Don't you want to see the finale?" Jiang Lin let out a shallow, pathetic sob and sank to her knees, realizing there was no escape. Song Kai, realizing his life was over, let out a guttural roar of rage. "If I'm going down, I'm taking you with me," he screamed. He lunged at me, his hands reaching for my throat, his fingers hooked like claws. The crowd gasped, and for a split second, I saw the window of the villa again. The cold air, the falling glass. But this time I didn't fall. A shadow blurred across the stage with a speed that defied the human eye. Before Song Kai's fingers could even graze my skin, Cang Lang appeared. He caught Song Kai's wrist midair with a sickening, audible crack. Song Kai let out a high-pitched wail of agony as Cang Lang twisted his arm behind his back and slammed him face-first onto the stage floor. Cang Lang stood over him, one heavy boot pinned to the small of Song Kai's back. He looked down at the pathetic man with a cold, detached boredom that was more terrifying than any scream. "Don't touch the lady," he said, his voice a low, gravelly warning. The double doors at the back of the hall swung open, and 20 uniformed police officers flooded the room. The lead investigator marched up the steps of the stage, a folder of evidence, the real evidence Cang Lang and I had compiled, in his hand. "Song Kai, Jiang Lin," the officer said, his voice ringing with authority. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, massive embezzlement of Ruan Corporation funds, and securities fraud." As the officers hauled Song Kai up and clicked the metal cuffs around his wrists, he looked at me one last time. He looked small. He looked insignificant. Mei, please," he whimpered. I was confused. "We can fix this." "The only thing we're fixing, Kai, is the leadership of this company," I said, my voice devoid of mercy. "Take him away." I turned back to the audience, the cameras, and the world. I stood at the very edge of the stage, my head held high, the fire of 1,000 suns burning in my veins. "The Ruan family is no longer in mourning," I announced to the cheering crowd. "We are in power." The villa was finally quiet, the kind of silence that felt earned rather than hollow. The annual meeting massacre, as the tabloids were calling it, had shifted from a headline to a historical turning point. Song Kai and Jiang Lin were no longer names whispered with respect in high society circles. They were inmate numbers in separate high-security wings of the state penitentiary. Their lawyers had fled like rats from a sinking ship the moment the forensic audit revealed the sheer scale of their theft. I stood on the stone terrace, the very spot where my life had once ended in a flurry of broken glass and betrayal. The night air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and the distant, electric hum of the city I now led. I looked down at the courtyard 3 stories below. In my last life, this height was my executioner. Tonight it was just a view. I leaned against the railing, feeling the cold iron against my palms, and I didn't tremble. Not even once. The board meeting ended 20 minutes ago. A low, familiar rasp sounded from the shadows behind me. Unanimous vote. "You are officially the chairman of the Ruan Corporation, with full veto power and a seat that no one will dare challenge for a long, long time." I didn't turn around immediately. I leaned into the sound of his voice, letting the tension drain from my shoulders. And the cleaning process?
I asked.
Song Kai's loyalists were escorted from the building before the sun set, Cang Lang said. I heard his slow, rhythmic footsteps as he approached. I made sure their severance packages were commensurate with their loyalty, which is to say, they left with nothing but their personal belongings and a very clear understanding that they are never to set foot in this district again. I finally turned to face him. Cang Lang was leaning against the stone pillar, his dark hair ruffled by the breeze. He had traded his tactical gear for a bespoke black suit, but he still looked like a predator, a wolf who had successfully guarded his territory. You look remarkably calm for a woman who just decapitated a corporate dynasty, he said, a ghost of a smirk playing on his lips. I had a very good teacher, I replied, stepping closer to him. The magnetic pull between us was stronger than ever, an invisible thread tightened by 3 months of shared secrets. But I heard a rumor that your men are packing up, that the debt is considered paid in full. Cang Lang's expression shifted, his eyes darkening. He looked out at the city, his jaw tightening. The contract was to see you through the meeting and ensure your safety until the arrests were finalized. My job is done, Mei. A woman in your position shouldn't be seen with a man whose name is whispered in the backrooms of the Silver Bar. Is that so? I asked, a flirty, defiant spark igniting in my chest. I reached out, my fingers grazing the silk of his tie before sliding up to the sharp line of his jaw. You think I fought my way back from the dead just to follow the rules of polite society again? I've already had a proper husband, Cang Lang. He tried to kill me. He looked down at me, his breath hitching as I stepped into his personal space. I am a shadow, Ruan Mei. I don't belong in the light of your boardrooms. Then I'll dim the lights, I whispered. I grabbed the lapels of his jacket and pulled him down toward me. I don't need a husband to dance with on the bed, Lang. I need a king to rule the dark with. Are you telling me the great wolf is afraid of a little corporate scandal? A low, dangerous chuckle rumbled in his chest. He suddenly wrapped an arm around my waist, lifting me slightly off my feet until we were eye to eye. His grip was firm, possessive, and entirely honest. I'm not afraid of the scandal, he murmured, his face inches from mine. I'm afraid that if I stay, I'll never let you go. I'll become the very cage you've been trying to escape. You aren't my cage, I said, my voice steady and certain. You're my wings. Now, are you going to keep talking about contracts, or are you going to show me how a shadow says goodbye? He didn't say another word. He crashed his lips against mine, a kiss that tasted of victory, rain, and a future that was finally, undeniably mine. The weight of the past, the window, the fall, the betrayal was gone. In its place was a fire that would keep me warm for the rest of my life. As we stood on the terrace, suspended between the city lights and the stars, I realized that I hadn't just survived my death. I had conquered it. The Ruan family was back, and this time, the queen had a shadow that would never fade.